All right, it's been a year now since I read the 5th reading of the Redemption Manual. And it's kind of cold. It's in November. What is the date today? The 12th? It was November 2nd, I think, the last time I read this last year. So we're going to catch back up. And I will say that I have my dog outside. She's under the trailer. She thinks that a rat lives in the hubcap of the tire. So she's staring at it for like 45 minutes and I can't get her. But I'm just going to let her go out there. And if she starts screaming like a wild banshee, then I'll have to stop. But we wanted to get to the common law versus private law. So let's see. Yeah, let's get this over here and we'll read it. So this is where we ended up last. Common law versus private law. To understand common law in its usage and applications, we first need to realize that it is law by execution. Not like by killing anybody, but by them doing it, they're executing execution that way. Or the law that was called the Mosaic Law. That's interesting. That has evolved, into Roman civil law. That's interesting. The Roman civil law is the base for our present statute law that exists today. Therefore, the common law is the statute law by execution, needs a public agreement that it is in common public use today, that carries a public liability, a tax collection for its usage. In our nation, we have both common stock employees and preferred stock inalienable rights. Let me go over that piece again so that we can let it sink into our heads. In our nation, we have both common stock employees and preferred stock inalienable rights. In order for the government to regulate its common stock consumers, it has taken an assumed tax exemption priority of the individuals, which are using the industrial goods and services of the nation. By partaking of the industrial products, there is a tax that must be collected in order to keep record and track of all the industrial energy usage, and all common stock public funds have a public liability. As these funds represent the energy, money is the evidence of transfer of energy that must be regulated. We volunteer to pay the taxes just by our use of industrial goods and services, which is why it is a voluntary tax system. If you do not use any of the industrial goods, then there are no taxes. In order to use the industrial goods and services without the requirement of taxes, we must accept the charges. And direct them back to the government. All 100%. And thereby we lend our tax exemption priority to the government to discharge the public liability. So I'm going to read that part again. In order to use the industrial goods and services without the requirement of taxes, we must accept the charges and direct them back to the government. I accept that charge there. Here you go. I'm directing it back to the Treasury. All 100%. And thereby, we lend our tax exemption priority to the government to discharge the public liability. This exchange gives us an employer status. Oh, employer. Oh, not employee. Or inalienable rights, the preferred stock. Yeah, that's what we want. Which then allows us to enjoy all the goods and services at our will. Now, that sounds good. I like that. Okay. Hey, how did that happen? What? Come on. Get it back. Get it back. Where did it go? Darn it. Oh, I hate it when that happens. Okay, let's try this again. Rats. What page was that? 62? I don't know. Darn it. Where are we? Or was it 63? All right. Darn it. I don't know what happened. Well, I'm going to have to look to see what happened to that. Huh? Wait, what page? This is page 60. Okay, we read that, I think, in the other one. Is it page 62? Darn it. I hate it when this happens. Oh, okay, I have to reduce it down. Command minus. Oh, there we go. Now I can see. Common law versus private law. That's where we were. Okay. It was page 62. Okay, so here we go. I want to make it bigger, though, because I like it when it's bigger. Darn it. Don't do that to me. Come on. How did that happen? Page 62. What is up with that? That's weird. Page 62. Okay, there we go. It's right here. I want to go here. Command plus. Okay, good. So the common law evolves from the Old Testament, and our private law, inalienable rights, come from the New Testament. Huh? I don't get that. As the New Testament is the fulfillment of the law by operation, all public law is execution of law, or Old Testament. I don't know. And the New Testament is international law. Is that right? But an individual can only fulfill it voluntarily by operation. Okay. The operation of law can only operate when no malice or vindictive harm is intended, and is based upon the conscience of those charged to uphold it. It is purely spiritual. All right. To sum it up then, with common law rights, constitutional rights, we are considered by the IRS to be employees of the federal zone or non-resident aliens. Okay. With our unalienable rights, we volunteered into the federal zone with our priority exchange for the tax exemption, and therefore we are now the employer. Okay. I'm going to have to watch this video over again because it didn't get that. That's weird. But I'm going to move on. Therefore, common law is unto death. And it cannot give eternal life, as it operates only by execution, death, to transfer the energy through the principle. Private law, operation of law, is unto life, as it is done by acceptance, the acceptance of the charges of a contract through command. Okay, through acceptance public liability. Darn it. This is crazy. All right, where are we now? Okay. I want to go to the next page, but I have to reduce it to move to the next page. Okay, so here it is. Acceptance, public liability. Execution is offset. Giving life. It does not require the death of the principle to redeem. The energy is transferred not through the principle, but by the principle. Okay. Note, once you understand the full power of Calvary, acceptance for value of what Christ did on the cross for each of us, you will understand how our debt, sin creates debt, is paid in full. Yeah, but there's still sin in the world and people still sin. Okay. Is he thinking that there is no such thing as sin? Because there is. Just saying. Gotta throw a spoke in your wheel here. So I'm going to move on. Defendant. All of the time you have spent in your life researching and studying the law, the rules, etc., must be reformed and relegated to and for historical purposes only. If you do not do this, you will always be a defendant. From now on, we are going to agree with our adversary quickly. This concept is new to us. I don't know, it's so twisted. It will take some time to understand. That's for sure. In the end, God's word and godly people always win. Okay. Yeah. All right. That was tough for me. Oh boy. The theory of cognitive dissonance. This is funny. Okay. Here it is. Dissonance, lack of agreement, consistency, or harmony. Discord. As computers go, the human brain is without parallel or parity. When compared, parity, parallel, when compared to even the most sophisticated man-made computer. Nevertheless, it is a computer, and like all computers, it can be programmed. I just feel like this is an L. Ron Hubbard thing. It just feels like a cult thing. It's so weird. But I'm going to move on. Let's just continue here. There is a theory known as the theory of cognitive dissonance, which holds that the mind involuntarily rejects information not in line with previous thoughts and or actions. Yes. V. Leon Festinger may have been the first person to document the law of cognitive dissonance, but he was certainly not the first to observe it. Since the most ancient times, mind controllers have been enticing free people into servitude, piping them on board, so to speak, by taking advantage of man's tendency to generate cognitive dissonance. In his book, A Theory of Cognitive Dissonance, Stanford University Press, 1957, Festinger says that new events or new information create an unpleasantness, a dissonance with existing knowledge, opinion, or cognitive concerning behavior. That's true. When this happens, pressures naturally arise within the person to reduce the dissonance, not reconciling the new information with the old, but reducing the dissonance. V. Leon Festinger, further stated that the strength of the pressures to reduce the dissonance is a function of the magnitude of the dissonance. Dissonance acts in the same way as a state of drive, need, or tension. The greater the dissonance, the greater will be the intensity of the action to reduce the dissonance, and the greater the avoidance of situations that would increase the dissonance. A person can deal with pressure generated by the dissonance by changing the old behavior to harmonize with information. But if the person is too committed to the old behavior and the way of thinking, he simply rejects the new information. A simple "I don't believe it" thought or word is the easy cop-out. For if you are unaware, you are unaware of being unaware. Okay. Kings. All right. I'm assuming that this is this next page, right? Yeah. Page 65. Okay. Kings. All right. Let me do one more bigger one. Wow, that's really big. But I kind of like it, but oh, it could be scary. It could be scary because then I would lose my spot. Let's try this. Okay, we're going to try it. All right, Kings. Yay, I pushed past the dissonance and I learned something. God made man both king and priest, and said that man's insistence on having an earthly king to rule them, instead of depending on God's word to rule them, was the same thing as rejecting God. It still is. Then all the elders of Israel came to Samuel, or Samuel. Make us a king to judge us like all the nations. And the Lord said, the people have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. Howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. And Samuel told all the words of the Lord. This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries, and to be cooks, and to be bakers. And he will take your fields, and your vineyards, and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the 10th of your seed, and your vineyards, and give it to his officers, and to his servants. He shall take the 10th of your sheep, and you shall be his servants. And you shall cry out in that day because of your king, which you shall have chosen, you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. 2 Samuel 8:11-18. So if you're deemed a king and priest, a secured party, creditor and sovereign, what need of you to be ruled by tyrants, lying politicians, dictators, and presidents? Are you not free? Can you not take the responsibility? The career politician's creed. We will tax, 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 spend, spend, and spend, and the voters will re-elect us, re-elect us, re-elect us, because they're too damn dumb to understand. Harry Hopkins, an advisor to former President Franklin Roosevelt. We tax his pay, tax his play, even tax his time of day. We tax his shirt and tax his coat, tax his car and tax his boat. Sounds like Dr. Seuss. We tax his food and tax his drink, tax him good so he can't think. We tax his house, tax his chair. By taxing his comb, we tax his hair. By taxing his pills, we tax his health. With taxes on taxes, we steal his wealth. And when he's sick, we'll tax his bed. Tax him till he's good and dead. Then we'll place upon his tomb, taxes drove me to my doom. But after he's gone, we won't relax. We'll steal his kids home with an inheritance tax. Yeah, this sounds just like a Dr. Seuss book, man. That's pretty good. Don't you find it curious that the sole solution of the politician's remedy for every problem, for the most part of which they create, is the raising of taxes? Never do they reduce the size of the government, never do they reduce their salaries, but at your cost, you pay for everything, and even that which they waste. All right, bottom of 64, man, men. In looking at the word man, men, etc., as they were created in the image of God, contract, yeah, I did it. This then shows that the man created was the industrial bond, which was created by the contract. The industrial bond is the image of the industrial benefits for society. But when the deception took place, the systems operators, attorneys, oh, hang on a second. Gotta go get my kid. My little furry kid wants to come inside now. Are you all done? You ready to come up now? Good girl. Hey, hopefully you won't be going out anymore because, you know, it's getting cold out there. Yeah, you want to give me a blankie? Good girl, you did good. Oh, your ears are cold. Okay, hurry up. We're getting you a blankie. Okay, I'm going to get back to my reading here. All right, let's see where we were here. So the attorneys deceived the financial institutions into believing that the debt, borrowed funds, municipal bonds, were what they needed, and thereby the debt money individuals were able to in-debt all of society into believing the lie, and thereby destroyed the beneficial public government. It no longer had the debt-free industrial bonds, men, to operate for all of society's benefit. Then the industrial bonds were, or are now, based upon debt funds or municipal bonds, and therefore they are consuming all the energy funds needed to keep our society operating. In Genesis 6, which is about the energy that was taken from the public government, it was to hold it and use it to run the industrial society. The flood of public funds has again covered the earth. An analogy. And it is time to charge back the debt, energy, money, by use of the public policy, HJR 192. Okay, here's the other analogy. The ark, he's using some symbolism here, is the private government treasury, Federal Reserve, that will act as the mediator to republic the public debt funds by private assignment or acceptance. Thereby, once again, the public government will hold the energy money for the industrial uses. Excuse me. After the true energy was perverted, the perverted funds were only for personal gain of a select few and were immoral funds. Excuse me. Therefore, they cannot heal, but only destroy whoever took part of their use. Okay, so here's the word and the definitions. Men equals industrial bonds, privately held and assigned to the public government's or republic's use. Then there's giants. Oh, they're really stretching this, boy. Are the corporations formed by the attorneys or by the people that they induced? But either way, they are not held by debt-free funds and are consuming not only the owners, but also those who partake of their services or goods, as all corporations are held in bar by the legal society. Then there's daughters, the lending institutions that are part of the corporate industrial system. Boy, I tell you, this is a rewiring of the brain here. It's a whole different language. Okay, and the assumed tax exemption of those who use their services. Ground, industrial costs. The contract accepted the costs, and thereby the breath of life was established for the goods to be republicked. Woman was formed as the public bond in offset to the private bond. Garden of Eden. All industrial goods and government are created for the benefit of those who know how to regulate and operate the system. By contract or today, the written word, by operation of law, New Testament. When the system is operating properly, it will benefit all individuals in the whole world. Okay. And then here's the next one. Corporations. Corporations being artificial. Wow. This reminds me of the Matrix with the machines. And created by government, borrow from the government treasury, which holds the energy, but the government has both the corporate side for daily operation and the public person. and the agency for enforcement of public policy, regulation, and statutes. Whenever a public regulation, policy, statute is offended, the agency must hold someone responsible with the commercial charges to mend the offense, either by imprisonment or by allowing the offender to use the charges to purchase public goods and services. When the individual is held in prison, the charges are used by the public for public needs and public expansion, but the individual who holds the charge is held on account with no personal use. Once a corporation manufactures a product that is consumed by the public, example, public goods and services, that it has paid for, the public debt must be discharged via HJR 192, and an equal exchange must take place. The individual must hold charges from an offense before he or she can exchange this for public goods and services. Without the charges from an offense, an individual must or can only exchange public debt, unredeemed public funds, for public debt, which is against the public policy HJR 192. The individual then can someday be held accountable for this offense, which will give him or her the charges required to discharge the public obligation within a limited scope, but only for the benefit of the public corporations need to take care of their inventory stock, people. This accountability can come in the form of either illness or legal redress. This occurs when a corporation either allows a person to hold and consume the public liability, which prevents it from passing through to the government, which causes the passover. Oh boy. Oh my gosh. Or by holding the charges energy back for the use and consumption of the industrial complex. We can be the holder in due course, which means someone, government, is holding the charges energy for our benefit. In fact, this is what HJR 192 is all about. We are to pass our debt to the government instead of to another individual. When an individual does experience either medical or legal problems, the modern practices of either these professions, with their latest voodoo and chromium-plated theology practices, can only treat the symptom and not the root cause. If they were to treat the root cause, they would either bury or imprison their client. Because of their limited license, they are not allowed to attend to this primal concern, lest they obtain a charge that must be addressed and create a repetitive cycle that can never end. This is one reason why there's no remedy in the public system. Though we need it. And it is the one that must regulate the commercial transactions between individuals, men and governments. Okay. General information. Attorneys are limited. That is to say, they must stay within their industrial license because they cannot make commercial claims, as commercial claims are commercial retail amounts covered by the truth in lending requirements that hold persons personally responsible. The administrative license of an attorney in bar has no accountability. Wow. Is thereby limited and has no authority to convey title to anything. Wow. That's pretty wild. Like I was just thinking about a deed. And they said, take it to an attorney. Wait a minute. It says that the attorney in bar has no accountability, is thereby limited, and has no authority to convey title to anything. The only way that an attorney can enter the commercial zone is by the assumed tax exemption of some individual, or if hired by some individual man. Your UCC contract trust treasury account is the insurance for the full retail amount because it is the principal and the source. A sufficient amount is your acceptance of whatever the bill happens to be, since whoever tells you how much the bill is becomes the witness to the fact, the forebearer, who carries the burden of testimony by license. You bind that testimony by your acceptance. Your acceptance is the criminal charge, in fact. Okay. Acceptance of deficiency charges the deficiency to prepay closing of escrow. The calendar call is the exempt priority adjustment. The principal allows the agent to take the exempt priority to offset the deficiency or adjust the account to zero. Let me read that part again. Acceptance of deficiency charges the deficiency to prepay closing of escrow. The calendar call is the exempt priority adjustment. The principal allows the agent to take the exempt priority to offset the deficiency or adjust the account to zero. In other words, the fiscal year and calendar year together make one whole year. Concept, suggestion. Request circuit court deputy to take the deficiency charge of action and put it on the circuit court docket. Oh, and call the calendar. Call the Bailey broker in charge of the adjustment. Whoa. You know how they say put it on the calendar? That's weird. That's what they do, man. To deliver the same to the principal, requesting release of the commodity, putting the whole account into one account. Request the order of the court to be released to the principal. That sounds good. I request the order of the court to be released to the principal. Boom. Public education. Well, I like that paragraph right there. And I like that one too. I don't know about this. Adjust the account to zero. How do we do that? Accept the deficiency charges. Okay. Public education versus the monetary system. What is this? A lot. No, take that L out of there. A lot, not a lot. A lot is being requested of the young individuals that are coming from our primary education system. They, children, are being taught that they should go on to obtain a college education. Public education is just what it says. You are educated for use in the public system, and thereby you become accountable for the public liability debt that the public money carries. It is sold with the idea that with better public education, individuals will be able to lead profitable lives by giving them the tools that they need to make greater amounts of money. In turn, they will be able to obtain the commercial products required to create a more comfortable life. First, we must take a look at how public money affects, or what it does to an individual. Money is the evidence of the transfer of energy in commerce after the fact. So the commercial cause for the transfer has taken place before the actual event has happened. In other words, the public offer was made first, then the actual acceptance or need was exchanged. Because of this being the case, the individual who made the public offering thereby carried the public energy, negative, within themselves, speculation upon an acceptance, which may cause other problems that can be medical, legal, or personal in nature. This suggests that the more available the public funds are for our use, the more likely we are to have other problems in our lives. We must remember that the true creation of money is by our endorsement signature. Money created in any other method is by the acceptance of someone else's debt. Such a debt carries with it a negative charge, and this negative charge must be decayed in our bodies, which causes us to age. Okay. The negative side is the public liability. It can only be discharged by our acceptance and charging back, or republic revenue. The public money back to the public for the public to use. If this is done, there is no longer a public liability, and it will not carry the negative charge as before. It states in the scriptures to seek ye first the kingdom, which is to find your own inheritance that was created at your birth, and thereby all other needs shall be taken care of. There is a maxim of law that says the money of the sovereign is his credit. He is the wealth for which no substance on earth can establish a value for. You must first obtain your sovereignty. Not very many people are going to find their true sovereign rights, as they must learn to hold the criminal charge, and this is not publicly acceptable, as the public system cannot teach this. You must seek and do your own searching, and not follow the government leader as the system wants us to go along with their debt program of servitude. And not to venture out on our own. This will label you as undesirable. But it is people like yourselves who lead and keep the public system in check. The public system is a necessary evil, and once an individual learns how to harness it for his or her benefit, the public liability shall no longer affect him or her. The public system is the system that we must live in, and it will provide us with all our needs. We must learn how to stop its uncontrollable liability by our acceptance and revenue, done very simply. Revenue. When you have a need to know, you will search it out. Seek and you shall find. Thereby, when we accept more public education, it becomes a greater liability debt, and it becomes harder to obtain a true liberty. Yeah, that's true. It is a built-in factor that when we accept public degrees, we become liable for the public's benefit. Interesting. Should we obtain a public education? We need to keep private values that allow us to use the public education to enhance our ability to benefit the public and ourselves. Once we have learned to read, write, use math, research, and investigate, we can educate ourselves. But there are certain parts of the public educational system that can be used to benefit us beyond such basic instructional needs, such as vocational technical schools. Here, we must be very careful not to obtain the education to serve the public master, but to harness it, not only for our own good, but for the good of the general public too. Public education is used to attempt to help people fill their needs, but in doing so, most want a fast fix and do not attempt to figure out what the real roots of the problems are. This is why the legal and medical fields are so volatile and keep individuals from searching for the truth and true healing. In Matthew chapter 23 and Luke 11, it states that the people in these fields will be held accountable from Abel to Zechariah, or from A to Z. A lot of well-meaning people don't understand the private to public concept and encourage individuals to get a good education. Maybe we need to really get a good education on the private versus public accountability. And this can only be done by private study and experience. A public education looks good on paper, but it's the after results that may get you and hold you accountable, as in debt for the rest of your life for the public liability. Some of my university professors were still paying money off of their student loans for their doctorate. Republic. What does it mean to republic, or to have a republican form of government? The republic is referred to in the scriptures as heaven, or where the private held commercial stock is held by agents. How does it have to do with heaven? It states in the scriptures that only your agent, your angel, knows. Nowhere in the scriptures does it state that you are going to be in heaven. All references are to angels, agents in heaven. Is that right? I thought you said the kingdom of heaven is within you. A government agent who, by oath and bond, must do your private commercial business, as requested in writing. The spoken word is only hearsay. What? Excuse me. And as Christ had said on the cross, it is finished. Hearsay. Well, he did what he came to do. John 19:30. We have to keep in mind that the government has only one function, and that is to regulate the commercial transactions business between people and or the states in the light of U.S. bankruptcy, also known as national emergency, March 9th, 1933. The only way that the government has to measure these affairs is by the commercial paper passed between the individuals, which are valued by the tax value on the paper transaction. In order, after the order of Melchizedek, Hebrews. Where does this person? Oh my gosh. I don't know where this person gets this stuff from. So there is to be no taxes due. There must be a tax filing or registration, as they are one and the same. In order for the registration to take place, it must be ordered by an individual, which after registration, the immoral criminal usage hereby diffuse the funds have been republicked. In the above reference to registration by an individual, the question could be asked why the government agent doesn't just register the commercial transactions. Then the funds would be diffused, redeemed, right? This would be Beelzebub casting out Beelzebub. So the Lord of the Flies casting out Lord of the Flies. Matthew 12:24. Or, to put it in plain words, you cannot use a negative, a minus symbol, to reduce a negative. Oh. Well, that explains that one remittance coupon I just did. Negative. In the relationship with the government, the government is a negative, infidel, debtor. This leaves only one who can be the other side of the bond, and that would be the sovereign secured party creditor, who can be the only one to order the registration of the funds. Luke 2:1-51. Note, only a positive can erase a negative. Example, your private credit, positive, can wipe out the debt, negative. To republic would also be to revenue. Interesting. Interesting. Oath versus license. Study the similarities and differences between taking an oath versus purchasing a license, and how they are viewed in the public liability. An oath is our acceptance of our public offer to serve the public by the discharge of our duty and obligations, either by discharging, doing, or by dishonor, failure, refusal. Hey, Verizon, you've been failing and refusing my money orders. That's dishonorable there. We have bound our subconscious to act upon true, natural agreements that have been accepted, and charged acceptance is charged by an individual. Failure of the individual to honor his oath, who has bound his conscience to an act, has bound his conscience, must be conscience, to an act or uphold the laws of nature, such as the promise to pay, to correct the damages by his wrongdoing, creates dishonor. What? Such as the promise to pay, to correct the damages by his wrongdoing, creates dishonor? That sounds twisted. Let me reread this again, because this just sounds wrong. What the heck is this Luciferian? Failure of the individual to honor his oath, who has bound his conscience to an act or uphold the laws of nature, such as the promise to pay, to correct the damages by his wrongdoing, creates dishonor. So he's comparing two things: failure of the individual to honor his oath, was bound as conscious to an act or uphold the laws of nature, such as the promise to pay to correct the damages by his wrongdoing, creates dishonor. I don't understand how that creates dishonor, but let's just keep reading. This action only takes place under moral undertakings and with no malice involved. A license carries about the same convictions, but the public is selling the right of its liability, thereby limiting the account field to those who are regulated to duties requested under a limited obligation to perform. The study of the immorality of public license can be found in Acts chapter 8 and chapter 22, verse 28. Licenses are necessary, as the different public responsibilities carry a very narrow path. Act. Only those trained in that narrow path act know the proper connection. This goes back to public education, which most people believe broadens your knowledge, but it's only knowledge based upon a narrow point or subject. In order to control the application of this narrow view, it must be licensed so as to protect the innocent from its misapplication, which is considered malice or immorally taking advantage of the innocent. Immorally. Once we purchase, accept the license, we then become accountable in the same manner as an oath. When the individual holding the license is requested to act upon his duties and obligations, he or she refuses, fails, dishonors, he or she then has accepted the commercial dishonor that goes with his or her action and is charged accordingly. G, like a driver's license, for example. You accepted the license and you became bond to the motor vehicle code and accountable to the state. You speed, you pay the fine. Right? Money creation and banks. Some individuals, with their endorsement, their signatures, creates all money. When it is created in the public forum, it carries a public liability which must be taxed to the government. Whenever an individual signs a note at a bank, this creates the funds that he or she is borrowing. Even the wages or funds that a person accepts from working or selling products that they grew or made are public funds that have been borrowed into existence by someone else. The Federal Reserve Act allowed the banking system to set up the way that a person could redeem these funds that they are handling. Again, the Federal Reserve Act has two sides: the public, which the Federal Reserve Bank uses in the public form, and which most people are familiar with, and the private side, which only those who hold the preferred stock of the United States are going to be able to use. Whenever a Federal Reserve Bank buys United States bonds, bills, or notes, it must issue a negotiable instrument draft for the purchase of the public offerings. This instrument requires some individual signature, but it must circulate back to the bank, where it is placed on the ledger as collateral. to be held as the collateral for the original issue. These funds were created by a public acceptance, and therefore they carry a public liability, and they must be taxed as they pass through the system. When a non-negotiable instrument draft is received by a bank, it is placed upon the bank's ledger as collateral for the bank, and the bank charges the account of the principal who endorsed the instrument. These funds were created by a private tax exemption and are non-negotiable, which means they do not carry a public liability that must be taxed. Non-negotiable funds can only come from the individual, secured party, creditor, sovereign, who accepts a criminal charge, oh my gosh, and thereby is the holder of the priority tax exemption to pass the charge through. All right, our mirror image. The mirror image is referred to in the public system as a straw man. This is what was created by the registration or filing of an individual's birth certificate. This is a necessary evil in that the government needed to provide for our needs by the creation of the industrial bond to provide the goods and services for our lives. This was done in a public form, and it carries a public liability, and it must have an execution, death, in order for it to be paid off in the public system. Should the individual accept this bond for value, then it loses its public liability, as the individual has used his tax exemption to allow it to pass through him or her and not carry this public liability. When the public laws are passed, these laws are to regulate the industrial society. Oh, okay. And its commercial activities they affect. Public law, which has been done away with by the United States government, bankruptcy, and thereby commerce, is regulated by public policy now. Whenever an infraction of public policy occurs, it is charged against a straw man, and since most individuals are not aware of their straw man, they believe it is charged against them as an individual. Yeah, that's true. Okay. They try to use public law argument of facts to deny these charges. Oh. Let me see, command minus. So, accept these charges. Oh, wait. What did it say before? There is no controversy. Okay, wait, hang on. Command plus. Accept these charges. There is no controversy. And you then become the holder in due course. Oh, did it because it got transferred? Maybe. Reassigned. And these charges become your private property, which cannot be regulated in the commercial zone. Oh, interesting. When you accept your birth certificate for value, you're then the holder of the industrial bond, which it created. It's now held for both your benefit and the public's, but the public liability is no longer attached to the bond or your straw man, which is now yours also. Oh, okay. Two quotes, one from the past and one from the present. John Adams said, "I'm firmly of the opinion that there never was a paper pound, a paper dollar, or paper promise of any kind that ever yet obtained a general currency as money, but by force and fraud. Whoa! Wow! That the army has been grossly cheated, that the creditors have been infamously defrauded. Some close their shops to prevent being paid off with worthless paper money. That the widows and the fatherless have been oppressively wronged and beggared. That the gray hairs of the aged and the innocent, for want of their just dues, have gone down with sorrow to their graves in consequence of our disgraceful, depreciated paper currency. See the Financial History of the United States, 1896 ED. Oh, and here's a book, From Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. I have this little book. The international organization intents, purposes, and activities include complete control of public finances, control, supervision, and audit of indigenous fiscal resources, budget practices, taxation, expenditures of public funds, currency issues, and banking agencies and affiliates. This, of course, complies with Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Research Technical Manual, TMSW 790S.1, which discloses a declaration of war upon the American people. Yeah, to wit. This manual is in itself an analog declaration of intent. Such a writing must be secured from public scrutiny. Otherwise, it might be recognized as a technically formal declaration of domestic war. Furthermore, when any person or group of persons in a position of great power and without the consent of the public uses such knowledge and methodology for economic conquest, it must be understood that a state of domestic warfare exists between said person, Bill Gates, or group of persons and the public. Page 3. I put in Bill Gates by myself. Consequently, in the interest of future world order, peace, and tranquility, it was decided to privately wage a quiet war against the American public, with an ultimate objective of permanently shifting the natural and social energy, wealth, of the undisciplined and irresponsible many into the hands of the self-disciplined, responsible, and worthy few. Page 7, Secret Weapons for Quiet Wars. In order to achieve a totally predictable economy, the lower class elements of the society must be brought under control. Example, must be housebroken, trained, and assigned a yoke and a long-term social duties for a very early age, before they have an opportunity to question the propriety of this matter. In order to achieve such conformity, the lower class family unit must be disintegrated by a process of increasing preoccupation of the parents and the establishment of government-operated daycare centers for the occupationally orphaned children. Yeah, that's true, huh? The quality of education given to the lower class must be of the poorest sort, so that the mote of ignorance isolating the inferior class from the superior class is and remains incomprehensible to the inferior class. With such an initial handicap, even bright lower class individuals have little, if any, hope of extricating themselves from their assigned lot in life. This form of slavery is essential to maintaining some measure of social order, peace, and tranquility for the ruling upper class. Page 8, Secret Weapons for Quiet Wars. Okay. I'm going to read this page here. This will be the last page for right now. March 9th, 1933, Senate document number 43, 73rd Congress, first session. The ownership of a property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government. This is a good one to copy right here. Copy and paste and send this to my, I'll do it right now. We're going to send this puppy to my timeshare. Because it says right here about the ownership of a property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government. Oh, darn, I got to do it again because I think I lost it. I have to do it, and then I have to claim it and say done. Now I have it. Okay, good. That was Command, Shift, Command, and 4. That's how you take a snapshot on a Mac, by the way. So, right here, example, law amounting to mere user and use must be in accordance with law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. Repeated in hearing before a subcommittee of the Committee on Foreign Relations, February 17, 1950, page 494. Constitution for the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, Treaty Document 97-19, and the Communist Manifesto. Oh my gosh. Karma, we're not going to go outside. It's too cold. I know. It's fun out there, but it's only 7:05. Dang, it feels like it's 12 midnight. I'm so tired. It's so dark. Okay. On March 6, 1933, the Conference of Governors pledged the faith and credit of the several states of the Union to the aid of the national government, and therefore formed numerous socialist programs and committees, such as the Council of State Governments, SSA, etc., purportedly to deal with, accommodate the economic emergency operating under the Declaration of Interdependence. Wow, I've never heard of that one. Because that was in January 22nd, 1937, before you were born. Oh, okay. And published some of their activities in the Book of the States, Volume 11, page 144. This will be a really good thing to send to the tax collector over there for my timeshare. I'm going to do it. On February 17, 1950, Senate hearings were held concerning the UN and its organizations. James P. Warburg testified on February 17, 1950. We shall have world government, whether or not we like it. The question is only whether world government will be achieved by consent or by conquest. So much for a country where the people are free, independent, and with America being a sovereign nation. Evidently, the politicians have been lying to the American people for years. Yep, that's true. So I'm going to stop at page 72. And I will get on this so that we can know more. This one was a hard one for me because I had to deal with some cognitive dissonance. You know, I kind of didn't like what he was saying about the Old Testament versus the New Testament. I still feel like we're supposed to be doing the law of the Lord because the law of the Lord is good. And the 10 Commandments, they're not done away with. We're supposed to be doing that. But just because Yahusha, Jesus, because he came, you know, he died, and then they wrote the New Testament after, doesn't mean that those other ones went away. No, he came to do what he was supposed to do. He came to tell the truth. We need to obey is better than sacrifice. They did away with the animal sacrifice, but if you read in Hebrews 10:26, it talks about a sacrifice must be made for sin. It doesn't mean that sin went away when Yahusha died on the cross. A lot of religions are teaching that there is no such thing as sin anymore, and that they think that sin has disappeared. No, it's not true. Bad things still happen and people still do miss the mark. So that's why I'm going to have to listen to this again to see what this person is saying, because they might have been taken over with the ideology that, Christ has died for all sin, which is what we've been told. He came to teach the people and find the lost ones of Israel to come back to the Father. He did die a sacrificial death, but he went teaching the truth. And we are still supposed to be following the commandments. If people think that we don't have to follow the commandments, that's a sorry state. And that's Luciferian for you, because the people who worship the devil, their creed is do as thou wilt, which is the whole of the law. Do whatever you want. You could do whatever you want. That's not true, though. If you do, there's going to be some prices to pay. Read Hebrews 10:26, because it's going to tell you right there that if you are trampling over that sacrifice that was done for us, and you don't follow and get in the Father's house and obey the commands, there will be a price to pay, and you're going to pay it, because there's no more animal sacrifice. You're the beast, and you're the one that's going to be paying for it. So that's why I was kind of differing on when he was distinguishing between Old Testament and New Testament. And I was like, no, no. But anyways, have a good night. And it'll be interesting to listen to this again. Hopefully we don't brainwash ourselves into, wrong thinking. That's what I'm concerned about. Because the more you listen to stuff, the more you can get brainwashed. And you want to make sure that you're clinging to the truth and not the lies. So it's always really important to discern, what is this saying? Who is this person that wrote this? And what is their belief system, and what's their life look like? And you want to maybe look into that. Okay? So have a good evening, and we'll see you at the next video.